So here we are for another talk, attacking what is said about Einstein's relativity. And the title of this talk is Semantic Shift, Ether. So this is what Wikipedia says. Semantic change, also called semantic shift or semantic progression or semantic development or semantic drift, is a form of language change regarding the evolution of word usage, usually to the point that the modern meaning is radically different from the original usage. And you can read the rest of it. So the word we're going to be dealing with is ether, and the meaning of the word has changed, but the way physicists use it, it's sort of a mess. Next slide. So here are some examples of words in English that have changed their meaning over time. Words like awful, awesome, terrible, and terrific. So terrible, for instance, originally meant inspiring terror, and that shifted to indicate anything spectacular then to something spectacularly bad. More sort of word terrific originally meant inspiring terror, and that shifted to indicate anything spectacular then to something too spectacularly good. So English language is a mess because the words change their meaning. And if we go to physics, of course, we've got the problem when you're talking in English, those physics words are going to get messed up by semantic shift. The change in meaning of words is what people do, and in the case of physics this has messed things up. And of course the example I'm taking is ether, and that means medium for light waves, and it can be spelt another way, with an A or without an A. So what it really is, it's word games or wordplay. Theorists stroke physicists play a lot of word games, and in politics there is also a lot of wordplay where try to change the meaning of words, etc. when debating. One of the things I complain a lot about is that the movement of goalposts in physics, and that's where amendments, stroke changes, etc. are made to a theory. Changing the meaning of words is just another example of moving the goalpost method. I do a lot of searches on Google and other search engines. What I found is that Google now includes artificial intelligence, AI. AI is getting around to a lot of places now. As David D. Hilser from my group points out, along with others, can't really trust AI. But anyway, can ask AI a question and it will give an attempt at an answer. And if it asks if ether exists, it says no. And this is where I asked it. I said at the top there, ether, does it exist? And it replied, no, the ether does not exist. And it then gave all these reasons, talking about the Michelson-Morley experiment and so forth. However, if I ask AI if new ether exists, it says yes. And this is where I'm asking it. You see at the top I say new type of ether exists, and it says yes. There are new theories about the ether, and it's spelling ether with the A there. A theoretical substance that was once thought to be the medium for light and other electromagnetic waves. and it then goes on to talk about this new type of ether. So as per AI, ether does not exist and new ether exists. It does depend on how you phrase the question, and AI gives different answers, e.g. sometimes says no to ether and no to new ether. But what engaging with is AI playing word games. The term ether has been messed up, and I blame this person below for doing that. So this person below has caused AI to start playing word games with the word ether. So I'm going to refer to this article, paper, killed by its obituaries, explaining the demise of the ether, and that was published in 2022 by Jahumi Navarro. And it says of this person, he's a research professor at the University of Basque Country, working on the history of physics and the historiography of science. And he's written a book called A History of the Electron, J.J. and G.P. Thompson. And he's the editor of other volumes such as Ether and Modernity. So in the article he presents this. He says, in this paper I follow the demise of the ether in the first half of the 20th century to show how the first obituaries of the ether were instrumental in creating an object with specific and largely simplified properties related to but different from 19th century ethers. I suggest that writing the history of dead objects or objects an object wants to be dead is not epistemically neutral, but on the contrary, it involves a reformulation of the object itself. I show that this was indeed the case with the ether. Those arguing for its demise in the early 20th century tend to overlook as irrelevant one of the ether's most important properties, namely being the seat for the transmission of electromagnetic waves. Instead, they emphasized the contradictions between other properties of previous ethers so as to advocate for its disappearance. And he goes on to say, reflecting on the depressing situation of his world, this person, Victor Jacob, a fictional German physics professor, and I don't really like plunging into fiction when you're talking about physics, but this is a story, a fictional story, talking about a physics professor. And this fictional professor regrets Einstein's dismissal of the ether as superfluous. And if you can read the rest of it, but it basically is telling you this fictional person's night thoughts pictures the process of transformation of the ether from being a concept, or more precisely a tool for conceptual unity, to the ether as a word, simply a name that could be substituted by expressions such as physical properties of space. And this looked to him like an unfair nominalistic strategy. And basically what this fictional character is thinking is what some actual people think, but who those actual people are I don't quite know. But maybe basically what we're talking about is a linguistic trick of dismissing the term ether, and suddenly the properties which should belong to the physical properties that should belong to the ether are now being said to belong to space itself. So space becomes the ether just by this linguistic trick. And he carries on with this, and he points out it's a semantic trick. All that was done was wordplay, and it messes up the meaning of words. If I find the relevant bit here, Robert H. Dickey also regrets the abandonment of the word ether. That's a real person, arguing that with empty space having so many properties, all that had been accomplished in destroying the ether was a semantic trick. And so that's basically what you have. You have the words changing their meaning, which is not really very good. So go to AI, for example. If I type in special relativity as ether, it says no, the special relativity theory does not include the existence of ether. However, phrase things another way. General relativity I put in general relativity as ether, and AI replies yes, general relativity includes an ether. So special relativity doesn't have an ether and general relativity does. But you can put these things into AI in different ways, and AI will start giving different answers, and it's all because of this semantic shift, or the trick with words changing their meaning. So AI is just carrying on this wordplay with having words messed up. Ether is just one example of a messed up word. The Navarro's paper does go on, and I've only presented some of it to show the gist. He concludes and does not want to pass judgment as to whether to bring back ether. Despite physicists trying to bring back ether, even Einstein tried, see reference below, the mainstream is usually stuck erroneously saying it does not exist. I think I found where AI got its information from. It was Wikipedia. If you go to Wikipedia and where it talks about ether, there's a lot of things I don't agree with, but it eventually gets to making this statement. As historians such as John Satchell argue, Einstein's view on the new ether are not in conflict with his abandonment of the ether in 1905. So basically Einstein is supposed to have abandoned the ether in 1905, and then he changed his mind. As Einstein himself pointed out, no substance and no state of motion can be attributed to the new ether. Einstein's use of the word ether found little support in the scientific community and played no role in the continuing development of modern physics. So the old ether was discarded and replaced by the new ether, but they didn't like to use the term new ether, and so that's basically what it's telling you there. Einstein supposedly discarded the old ether, then he brought back in a new ether, but then the mainstream physicists don't want to refer to that as the new ether. So relativity is an ether theory, but they don't like to mention the ether. So mainstream just keeps making a mess and trying to sweep certain things under the carpet. In this instance, I pointed out what they're trying to sweep under the carpet is this thing about the ether. So thank you, that's the finish of this little talk.